Hello and welcome back to the Expo Factor, the podcast where we uncover what turns a good trade show into a brilliant one by putting people at the centre of the experience. Now in episode 2, you may remember, we looked at how to break the ice. In episode 3, we looked at how to build meaningful conversations. Now in episode 4, we go one step further, how to ask the right questions to keep those conversations flowing. And who better to have as my guest and to help than my brother from another mother, Han Leenhouts. He's the founder of Sales and Pepper, a sales training company, and author of Pepper Talk 2.0. In this episode, Han shares how open questions can help you engage better, qualify faster, and connect more deeply with stories, tips, and a good bit of humor too. Let's get into it and say hello to Han. Hello, Han. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Lee. It's an honor.
Yes, I know. Finally, we get to do this. It's been like 5 years that we've been talking about this, and we finally made it happen.
Yeah, well, and that's a good thing. I mean, two guys alike with the same hairdresser. I mean, come on.
I know.
What could you hope for, eh?
Yeah. I always call you my brother from another mother.
Yeah.
We're both in the industry, both wearing glasses, both with a beard, and
working in the same area. I mean, having the same interests.
It's crazy. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on the Expo Factor. And I'm delighted to have you because we both share a very similar passion in the art of engagement on the show floor. And let's get into it. Let's dive deep. And today we're going to be diving into the subject of asking open questions and to get the engagement from the attendees. But my first question to you, Han, is how did you end up doing what you do? And tell us your story.
Yeah. Well, there's a long version, the short version. I'll do it in between. What not many people know, that I first was a carpet tile salesman.
Wow.
So that was actually my first commercial job. I sold carpet tiles, and I sold at a certain. I did that for only 1 year, and I sold them to a stand builder.
Right.
And then that stand building guy, he said, "Oh, don't you want to work for me?" And I ended up with that company, which was based in the Netherlands, but already had branches in the United States, Laarhoven Design. And it was actually founded by a Mr. Laarhoven, and his nephew, Robert Laarhoven, who's also known in the industry, was in the United States. Yeah. And I worked there for almost 10 years, and I started there as the sales manager, but quite quickly I became a member of the board there. And I approximately worked there for 10 years. And then, we took different turns in life. And that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is that during that time, when we were building stands for people, we had people coming up to us and say, "Well, thank you very much for building the stand, but we are not going to a trade show anymore." And we said, "Okay, why not?"
Yeah.
Well, Lee, what do you think? What is the most common thing? Why do people stop going to trade shows? What do you think?
Because they don't pay, because they don't see the results.
That's one.
Yeah.
And on the other hand?
Because they didn't have a good time.
Well, yeah, there's another thing.
And they didn't get any customers.
Yeah, no, money.
Money and the cost, yeah.
You're all right, so there were no results.
Yeah.
And it costs a lot of money, so what do you really get out of it? And then our question always was, well, what did you want to get out of it?
Yeah.
And how often do you think we got an answer?
Very seldom.
Seldom. So I said, well, that's interesting. So you go somewhere, you throw money at it, but you don't have a goal. Yeah. Well, I said, no, I do not know. Please explain. And that was the case. And then we thought, okay, well, that's not a good thing. So we started saying to them, well, have a goal. But then what we also did, because as a stand builder, you have this handover moment. Like, here's the booth. Do you like it? Yes. Okay. Is it according to drawings and stuff like that? And the plan? Yes. Okay. Well, see you 3 days and I hope it doesn't fall apart. And then I come and take it away. But then we started looking at them at the second and the third day. What are they actually doing? at the show with the booth. Well, you and I know what we saw. We saw people on their huge phones. I mean, this is quite some time ago, and doing stuff where you think, well, even if you had a goal, you wouldn't reach it.
You would reach it, yeah.
And so we thought maybe there's a need for not only the booth, but also training. So we thought, well, let's find a guy or a company who could offer that training, because we thought it was a good idea. And the funny thing was, we couldn't find any agency in the Netherlands, and we were based in the Netherlands by then. Yeah. So we finally found a guy who said, well, I like to do that. Then we started offering it to people, and we couldn't sell it. People said, nah, we don't need it. They thought also, it's quite funny that you as a booth builder are offering these kind of trainings. I mean, stick to the booth and leave the rest to us. Well, the funny thing was, I quit my job at Lauerhoven, founded my own company, and the rest is history. And I'm here,
and here you are
doing that.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Now, you're the author of a brilliant book called Pepper Talk.
I got it here too. Yeah.
So tell me how that came about.
Well, I was training a car brand, Audi, Volkswagen, Porsche. They were all together in the Netherlands in one company. Yeah. And they were at the big car show, which nowadays has disappeared, but by then it was still there in Amsterdam. And I was training and coaching them. And the feedback was from the public, because there's these mystery calls, is, the opening lines are too weak. Yeah. That was what the public said. Yeah, they were all quoted, can I help you, and stuff like that. So I thought, okay, how can I help them? Yeah. And then I started writing some opening lines, especially focused on automotive. How would this car look on your in front of your house? Or if you have this car, a hot hatch, to what friend would you show it first? Yeah. So you put people mentally already in the position that they have the product. And these questions, I just sent them to the managers, and they gave them to all the people. And then they started having some traction and results. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So I started collecting the best opening sentences, because within my trainings, the booth trainings, which I started doing, we had this as an exercise. What do you say when someone walks by? And then, I wanted to do 500, to be honest, the 500 questions book. But after 224, my head was empty. And then I just enlarged the letter type. They're quite big letters. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, they're quite big. And then I said, well, it's 224. And now we are actually 20,000 copies further. I mean, that's an amazing amount for a niche book. But
absolutely, yeah. Brilliant.
And people still love it.
Okay, so let's dive into the art of questions, asking questions on the booth. Now, there are many kind of mistakes that exhibitors are making when they, engage with the show attendees. What do you see as commonly the biggest mistake when it comes to asking questions to attendees?
Well, the first one is not asking a question. Nothing.
Absolutely, yeah. So, starting with the pitch, right?
No, one step, doing nothing, seeing people, but just turning away like, oh gosh, that's something. We're doing it in English, but the Germans, they have a saying for that. Hilfe, Hilfe, Kunde droht mit auf. That's help. The customer is threatening you with an order. I love that. So people are sort of afraid. It's of course also a strange environment where they are. All of a sudden they're quite exposed. So doing nothing, then saying something, but immediately, can I tell you something about the company? And the people say, oh yeah, go ahead. And then they just go with their commercial. And then the latter one is, asking those close questions where people could say, they're not always doing that, but could say no.
So why are out of all the questions that you can ask, obviously you've got the closed and then you've got the open. Why are open questions much better than closed questions?
Well, I'm not, when I'm training people, I'm not saying like that the closed questions are wrong, because they're already different from people who are doing nothing. So, not all the people will say no. When I do exercise, I constantly say no. People say, gosh, Han, you say no constantly. I say, well, when you want another result, ask me another question. You get the people talking when you ask an open question, and you can sense if they're open to talk. Even on an open question, people can just walk away, which is totally okay. It's an okay reaction. But they should realize we paid good money for this. We
Yeah.
could pay good money for those attempts. And that's a very important one.
Yeah.
I always say to people I train, you have a free license to hunt. No one will go to the organization, oh, company XYZ, we hate them. Hey, what's up? They try to talk to us. No, that will not happen.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously there are different situations. Okay. And when I first met you, I think it was in Birmingham, back in the early 2000s, you were doing a tour, I think, or you did a talk about, it was actually at the first time masterclasses, which were held by the exhibition industry in the UK.
Yeah.
And you demonstrated some really great examples of things to say in different positions around the booth. Okay,
Yeah.
so even in the book, you say something where people are actually observing the booth from a distance. So talk me through some of the different scenarios where you can actually use to your advantage when people are actually, just standing around your booth, and how you actually differentiate your engagement with them.
Yeah, well, to be able to do that, you have to be, your radar has to be on all the time. And I always make the distinction between people who are just looking around and people who are seeing things like, oh gosh, I see you.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at visitors, and then you have two sorts, the ones you know already, so they might come up to you and say, hey, hello. And then sometimes the problem is, gosh, I know you, but I forgot your name. Well, then we do badge reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then you have, how do people present themselves? Well, they just walk by. And they can look two sides. If there are stands on both sides, they look left, they look right. And you can do something. Some people say, okay, they want to be left alone. Well, that's what your thoughts are. Just try it. And so you have those questions, which can be very general. And the only thing is to get a reaction. Huh?
Yeah.
Where are you going to? How can I make you stop? Strange questions. What is your opinion about? What's the best thing you saw today? Whatever you say, and you just... Are they willing to talk? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Will they stop? That's when they walk by. Now, the other ones, then the booth does its work because from a certain distance, they observe your booth. Now, there are two things here. What do you say? But before, how do I come into a position to be able to say something? Now, you have the guys who start waving, like, come inside, like you're in the bazaar, some kind of country, like, come inside, I have a nice product for you. Well, the question is that going to work? So there is the way of how do you approach those people? How do you come close to them without them going away? Because if you go directly, they might be... Yeah. So I always say go around. And then people start saying, yeah, but it's funny. And you sneak upon them. I say, yeah, well, these two tones from Jaws. It's actually like that, like a shark. All of a sudden you're there. And then you're near to them. And then you wait till they look at you, and they will feel your presence, and then they look at you. And then I always say to people, what would you like to know from people who are looking at your booth? And the people say, yeah, why are they looking? I say, that's the question.
Absolutely.
Hey, sir, I see you looking. Hey, man, I see you looking at our booth. What made you stop? And then based on the answer, you have your follow-up question, etc., etc. But that's what you do. Just be curious. Why? Yeah. There are 100 stands, 50 stands, 500 stands, depending on the magnitude of the show. Why did they stop? What made them stop? And based on that answer, you can go on. Now, the next one, no dynamic, no distance. Yeah. No, they're close. They're looking at something. And then sometimes people, and I always say, that's a gift. And people say, well, they give a form of attention. And I always say, don't throw away the gift. So throwing away the gift would be, what brings you to the show? That's in itself an okay question. But if he's already looking at something, I would use that. And I always hope that they're a little bit provocative, like if it's a real product, like this thing. Yeah. And you could say, you're looking at our latest brown invention. How many do you want? Which is a totally strange question. Very direct. Maybe a little bit Dutch, but people will start laughing. Yeah. I once had a company that had a machine and they had a price tag on it, 500,000 euros. And there was a guy looking at it that didn't know him, and they approached him and said, hey, sir, you're looking at our latest machine. We only got one question. You want one or two? Which is quite an odd question for a 500,000 euro investment. Yeah. But the guy started laughing, and the guy thought, gosh, finally someone who's not taking himself too seriously. And the magic happens. And then there's a conversation. I always say, it's like a dance. Do you want to dance? If they don't want to dance, we leave you. And then we go to the next one or the next one.
Yeah.
So
And the key thing is always, the secret is always breaking the ice, isn't it? And
that's
the more
what
ways you find to do that.
And you also have to help those visitors. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also awkward for visitors. They're there and they think, oh gosh, maybe they come. Yeah, they will. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, oh yeah, you want to sell me something. And I say, yeah, well, you're right.
Yeah.
And then I say nothing. They say, well, you're right. Okay, let's have a conversation. And if they don't want, but that's what you pay the money for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another key thing that exhibitors miss is that they don't, asking questions is the ideal way to personalize the customer journey on the booth, right?
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you seen where attendees are coming along and it's just one standard elevator pitch that everyone gets? And that's a surefire way of turning people off and getting them to the next booth as soon as possible, right?
Totally right. I mean, one thing you should ask, how many sorts of potential visitors do you have? And sometimes there are 4 or 5.
Yeah.
When you ask it to groups, they say, yeah, I want to talk to decision makers. Oh yeah. Don't we all? Now, what is their job? Because a CEO has a different interest than the CMO, if they're in logistics, the logistics manager, if they're in sales, the sales manager, the marketing director, whatever.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you're in the middle of a conversation. Well, clients are in the middle of a conversation and they thought, oh, now I know who you are. Oh, I would have started differently if I knew who you were. So what I also say is once you've done the opening, immediately try to identify who is this guy? Where does he work? What does he do? And what are his or her responsibilities?
Yeah.
And so many people forget that. They just think, oh gosh, someone wants to talk. And then the guy says, well, tell me something about your company. The most killing thing is telling him what you do. And that's impolite, answering him, but I will answer him, but just before, because I say, well, there's so many things to tell you. I just want to tailor it. From what angle are you looking? From what part of the industry are you looking? And if people are not willing to share that info, that says something. That's okay. Well, then probably I'm not going to talk to you because they should know that you get the best info when you also share. At least that's my philosophy.
Oh, absolutely.
Get across.
Yeah, it's the same here. So what are the key objectives? I mean, obviously you've mentioned the qualification process. Okay. So to ask these open questions, you've got to know whether you've got the right person in front of you or not. What are the key objectives that a booth staff can actually achieve by asking the right questions?
Well, there are a few things. Am I talking to the right guy? Is the issue? Can we actually do something? Is there a mutual area where we hit? Where maybe he has a question and maybe we have a solution for him. Is he really authorized to talk about it? What's about the urgency?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can talk about it, sometimes you cannot. But can he afford you? I mean, does he have the budget?
Of course,
because you can talk to someone, but if it's too well in cars, it's always easy, because if you have the budget for BMW, you can go to the Porsche or the Ferrari stand, but it's not going to work. And some products do have their price and their price tag, but it's always a difficult one where you can't say, hey, well, how much money do you have? That's a sort of a strange one, and I also say don't cover the book by its cover. No, don't judge the book by its cover. That's the English. Because let me share an example. I was working for a company called Techno Gym. They make these things for gyms, and they were at the FIBO show, which is a huge show where all the fitness companies are, live fitness and etc. And I was training the guys, and I always say, talk to everybody. Don't think, probably not, probably. And there was a huge lady. I mean, some of the comments were, well, she could go to have a workout, which was true, but not nice to say, but okay. Yeah. And then people say, hey, Han, do we have to talk to this lady? I said, well, you never know. Come on, there are boundaries. I said, no. And of course, standard thing, they send out the youngest guy. Charlie, you go there, you do the thing. And Charlie came back after 10 minutes. He said, thank you very much, guys. I'm going. What do you mean? She was from a foundation from the Netherlands. The show was in Germany, from the Netherlands, against obese disease. She was acquainted with the problem. And she had the money and the budget and the urgency to buy these treadmills. Yeah? And she had €2 million budget, and it had to be spent within 6 months. So there was money, there was budget, there was relevance. But if you look at the lady, you think, what are you doing here? I mean, it's an extreme example, but it happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
It does, absolutely. I shared in my first podcast with Steve Moulton, we shared the story about me walking into a BMW dealership, and I was in my weekend pajamas and unshaven and looking, not the best shape possible. And my employer had given me a budget for my company car.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, go and spend it. And I went into BMW, and I asked, about the 5 Series, and he totally dismissed me. And he said, I look rough, I don't have the money and all that.
Fantastic.
And then I went to the next dealership. The guy treated me like a VIP, and he got the deal. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, Han.
But for example, and also age. And now I knew that sometimes you have those shows where the old people come and they want to have a chat. They're advisors and stuff, but you never know. And I once was at a agricultural show, a funny one, because the stands were outside, on the fields. That was the strangest area I went in, and there was an old guy, and they were selling second-hand tractors and stuff like that. Plows and whatever, and I talked to the guy, and the old guy said, "So you're talking to me?" I said, "Yes." Is that strange? Yeah. Well, no one talks to me, but my 2 sons have the biggest loan company. They loan out people with the machines to farmers. Yeah. And I said, "Dad, you go ahead." If I wouldn't have spoken to him, we wouldn't have a contact. So my statement is, you never know. No. And of course, when it's very busy, you can be a little bit picky, but sometimes you are just people walking by, just go there.
Yeah.
Just go there.
Yeah.
And the objective is just to establish the contact. Don't make it too complicated. You ask a question just to get into the conversation, to test the waters. Are they open to speak? And then you have more questions. By the way, the closed questions you need, because you need them too, is when you want to get rid of people. Then you start asking closed questions.
Yeah.
Because that's also necessary. I also have a category, how do you get off of sticky people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So we've got different scenarios. Obviously, we've got the initial breaking the ice. We've got finding the common ground. And then we really need to get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation. And that is to obviously qualify the qualification questions in terms of what their budgets are, when the needs are. And we have a phrase, I think IBM used this phrase called BANT, B-A-N-T, budget, authority, need, and time.
Yeah, well,
and then I think the most important one that a lot of people actually forget is the emotional connection, because people are people, right? And you talked about some great funny questions that you can actually ask people, and direct questions. And I think that has the key. That is the key between success and failure. Okay, by actually building that emotional connection with that person in front of you. So I think, where in the process do you think that is the best place to do? Is that at the beginning, in the middle, at the end? Or is it throughout the process?
Well, it's partly throughout, but in the beginning you have to get more information out of the person, and then the pitching, it goes more and more at the end. And it's also, what is your goal? Do you want to do the full pitch there, or is your goal to just sell the next appointment?
Yeah.
To raise interest and say, well, okay, our goal is to make the first appointment here, or the first connection here, and let's talk further on, later on. And there is also an important thing to say. I always say to people, when you get when you think, well, they might be good for a next appointment, try to make it immediately. Yeah. So, that might be too direct. I say, no, but they might say no. I say, I want them to say no. I want them to say no there, because the number of people who do a real proper follow-up, that's not a big number. So those visitors, they think, scan me again, because no harm done. No one will call me. Yeah, the dodgy email, thank you for visiting our booth. But that's standard. That's nothing. Yeah. The real good follow-up will not. So once you start making that motion towards making an appointment, then they say, well, maybe you call me next week. And then you say, well, okay, but we have certain dates allocated for those telephones. So when is the best time? Then again, you force him to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And when he then says, well, I call you, then okay, he will call me. He will never call me. Goodbye, choose, and it's gone, which is totally gone. But now the other side, the upside is when he says, well, next Thursday. And then what happens when you really do the call? They're like, hey, yeah, you were at the show and I could call you now.
Yeah.
That shows your first bit of quality. Like, okay, at least you did this appointment, you lived up to it. And it gets even better when you do that with the whole team. And sometimes they have like, he does the north, he does the south. And but because you all have those appointments at the same time in your agenda, you say, well, my colleague will give you a call. And then the colleague gives the call. And then you communicate. Oh gosh, they communicate amongst each other, which might be stupid. But it's amazing.
Yeah, it tells you a lot of things about the company, right? In terms of how professional they are. Because if the whole follow-up process is completely disjointed, what kind of example is that for the service that they actually deliver, right?
Lee, I always say to people, when you register yourself for a show, the next thing you should do is plan the follow-up. That's not what they're doing, but that's because the show is at this week, and then the 2 weeks after. You could already do that, and probably you book a show 6 months in advance. So then there are no other appointments, because some people complain and say, "Yeah, but I've been away for a week and there's a lot of work." I say that's true.
Yeah,
I'm not going to take that away. That is true.
You see, the thing about follow-up meetings is that everyone has one of these devices and they actually have them with them. In the old days, obviously, it was different where people had pages and stuff. But in this day and age, everyone has a calendar on their mobile phone. So it's very simple. How do you want to be followed up? Okay. And when is the best time to see you?
Yeah.
And okay, have you got your calendar with you? Let's book it in right now. Okay. And if you don't book that appointment there and then, and you wait 2 weeks, like somebody did to me last year. I went to a technology show. I wanted to talk about CRM systems, and we had a great conversation with the booth rep. And he says, okay, let me grab my scanner and let me scan your badge, and one of my colleagues will get back to you. Okay. And then he could have actually made an appointment there and then, because I gave him all of the clues in terms of my challenges with CRM, what I was looking for. Okay. When I was looking to purchase it or start the development, and he goes, let me get one of my colleagues to follow up with you. And then guess what I got 2 weeks later? A generic follow-up email. So imagine like a huge opportunity, okay, for a big CRM system to be developed, and it's just gone, okay, just because of that lack of knowledge, okay, or lack of process of what to do with a qualified sales lead.
I mean, you sense it immediately when you come to a stand. But to be honest, when I prepare trainings, I sometimes ask, I ask the company, give me one slide to give me the lead process. Yeah. And sometimes customers say, what do you mean? I say, how do you collect them? How do you capture them? Is there a little washing street where you say, the good leads go out? What's happening? Sometimes people are staring at you like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, gosh, but this is also a company who are spending 100,000. It is unbelievable. Yeah. It's also why we have a job, Lee, I mean, which is totally okay. But sometimes I'm like, or they argue with me about the fee for the training. They say, that's a lot of money. And there I'm Dutch and direct. And I say, you can't be serious about this one. That's the Dutch way. And then they sort of like, and sometimes they hate it. They say, oh gosh, this guy's too cocky, which is totally okay. And most of them appreciate it and say, yeah, you're right. I say, I want to be right. I want to improve your outcome of the show. But we have to be direct there. Because otherwise it's not going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. We're digressing a bit, but I think, again, Steve said in my first podcast is, I think the industry has a big problem in that we all seem to be focused on the big shiny booths, okay, as the first investment that we actually look at when we decide to commit to doing an exhibition, because the first thing that the exhibit planners do is look at the booth, right? When the talk should be about, okay, what does our strategy look like? Okay, what does our customer journey look like? What does the follow-up process look like? And these are the open questions. If you go back internally before the exhibition, these are the open questions that people should be asking within their teams, right?
Yeah, but that is so true. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
go even before.
Yeah.
I always ask people, well, who do you want to speak to? What's keeping them busy at night? So before the show, not have any
absolutely,
within their own company. What are the trends? And people say, oh gosh, yeah, oh, and then sometimes say, oh, that's good to think about the trends. I think, yeah. I say, okay, so because most of the discussions, what are we going to show them? My question is, who are they then?
Yeah.
And what's keeping them awake? Because we might have to show that they say, okay, I recognize it. I always compare it to the marriage album, when people get married, they have this album. And then I always say to people, well, you've been to a marriage. Yeah, you've been to, and then 6 weeks later, you come back and then you were at the wedding there. And then the people say, oh, you want to see the album? And you say, well, you think no, but you say yes. And you're looking at it, and then those people go away. You're alone with the album. The first thing you do is, where am I? Where are my pictures? Or when you went to an event, and they say, well, this is the drop of all the photos. Where am I? This is what people do. Where am I?
Yeah.
Is this you sending out info? Is it unique selling point or unique buying reasons? Why do people buy from you?
Yeah.
Do that investigation and don't go for, we're cheap or we're good and stuff like that. No, go deeper. To the drivers, and when you want to go deeper, you have to ask open questions because otherwise it will not work.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing for me, and again, this is another subject for a later podcast, is the importance of listening. You've asked the questions, and how many times have you seen, Han, on the show floor where people the stand reps are actually asking the questions, but they're actually looking at other people's badges who are walking past.
I know. And it is different. No, let me. It is difficult. It's a hostile environment because you're there, you're looking at someone, and there's someone too. The moment, by the way, your eyes went away, you went back. They know there was something. And by the way, if that other guy has seen you, they think, well, he has seen me. So you have two problems.
Absolutely.
At the same time. So when you do it, you have to. And some people say, but how is there something to how I can avoid it? I say, once you're talking to someone, just turn around that you don't see the audience that you're talking.
Absolutely.
It's a very practical thing. If you get distracted easily, I mean, what we do is very hands-on. That's why I always like not only the training, but also the real thing. Go to the show and be with them.
Absolutely,
I think, oh gosh, you're like a police officer. No, I'm working with you. But then what happens is it's quiet in the morning and someone walks by and say, okay, are you or me? So no, wait, too late. I'm going already. Yeah, but you don't know anything about the products. I say, that is true. So follow me. I make the first contact and I just say, well, and of course, we've done it a lot, so it's not that difficult for us. And then I just hand them over and say, well, I'm only the guy who makes the first contact, but he knows everything about it. People start laughing. 1 out of 100 says, oh, leave me alone. Bye-bye. Tschüss.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with actually passing people down the line. As long as you actually have a defined journey, okay? And this is where we work with a lot of clients in terms of looking at what does the journey actually look like and who are the specialists in those job roles, because not everyone is a great greeter, right? Or engager on the front of the booth. And the people who know the product inside out, okay, they're not the best people to have at the front of the booth, but they are absolutely brilliant at doing the pitch, at doing the demonstrations, right?
And sometimes it's the other way around. I've come across teams where the tech people were like, wow, well, that's sales. I said, well, no, tech guys. Maybe you are the better salesman. No, but I said, no, because people don't expect anything commercial from you. And then they start like, okay, And it's funny to see how those people, or people who are internally at the company only at the phone. When you bring those people to the show, they really like to be there. They have, especially with existing clients, they have a real connection. Finally I can put a face to that. But it is something you really have to think about, and not like, okay, we're having a show. Who are we bringing?
It has to be strategic. You have to look at your quality of your people and see who's really good at, engaging with people, see who's really good at, understanding the product and asking those deeper questions, and who's good at hospitality. And, you wouldn't have, like I always say, you wouldn't have your your accounts team doing sales, and you wouldn't have your sales doing your HR, right?
Yeah, that is so true. And also, what about, let me just, I mean, stories are always the best. I sometimes have a group and where I say, well, and if this is not your thing, this is the moment to step out. And then sometimes the manager look like shit, but I have these people. But once I had a general manager, he stood next to me and said, yeah, Han is right. Yeah, if you don't like it, this is the moment to say. Then you don't have to go.
Yeah.
And and then he added to that, I won't be angry. I will respect you for that.
Yeah.
That was an important remark. And then 3 people said, I actually don't like it. You don't have to go.
Yeah.
Everybody was happy because what would they normally do at the show? Started complaining, diving and stuff, like being distraction for the rest. And now they were very motivated. They said, no, we will hold the fortress and you go there. They were so happy that they didn't have to go. So they were motivated to stay at the company. Yeah. So you had 2 winners and everybody respected that.
Yeah.
But then you have, that's a good manager. Because then it works. What also works with the manager, I always say to CEOs, I say, come the first day and say that you will pour the first coffee half an hour before the show opens, that you do that personally. Because you solve one problem, no one is late. If the CEO's, because the CEO is pouring the first coffee, I have to be there. And normally, there was traffic. Gosh, was there traffic?
What we're talking about is that basically the exhibition environment is completely different to the day-to-day office environment, isn't it? And you have to prepare your team accordingly. And if people have not been to the trade show before, then they need to be trained, they need to be made aware of what it's actually like to actually stand up and say hello, 1,000 times to random strangers and be able to deal with that rejection as well. Yeah. On that question, how do you actually typically handle rejection when somebody says, no, I don't want to talk to you, Han?
I just leave them.
Yeah.
I mean, there are always enough people, so there's no pushing. And that's where, that's the fun thing is when I typically started training, people say, oh gosh, you seem to be like a pushing guy. I say, no, that's what I'm not doing. Yeah. I always do an attempt. Yeah. And then I wait for the reaction, and there's no pushing, because pushing doesn't work. Not at a trade show. People really don't want. Yeah. But I do say to people, leave that feeling behind, because some people say, when I enter a shop, I want to be left alone. I say, this is not the business of being left alone. If you go into a trade show, those people paid good money. Yeah. So they shouldn't be, it's, as I'm saying, the free license earned. They don't have to talk to you, but let me give you a fine example. I also do a lot for pharmaceutical companies. That's kind of a strange beast, because there you have the doctors who prescribe the new medicines. It's like architects who say, I'm not just going to use this material and this. They have a certain, I wouldn't say arrogance, but a power. They show their power, like I decide here. And I was once in a plane from Amsterdam to Vienna to train a pharmaceutical team. And I was next to a lady, and I was a talker in the plane, like those annoying people who start talking to you. I said, "Are you going to the conference?" And yeah, I'm going to. But she was quite, yes, I'm a speaker. I said, okay. And she was a doctor, professor, I don't know what. And I kept on asking questions. The good thing is, when you keep on asking, there is a question coming back. What do you do? When I revealed to her that was actually helping the industry, she almost tried to be reseated, because I hate it. And then, because there's people want to talk to you. I said, all right. I said, well, I have a solution for you. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, when you have to register for that Congress, and then you have to ask for the unicolor red lanyard. Normally they're sponsored, but it's unicolor. Yeah, and I said, when you wear that, the people at the stands know she doesn't want to be talked to. She wants to be left alone. And then her face started, does that exist? That's good. I said, yeah, that's one thing. You have to bring your credit card, because it's 6,000 euro.
Wow.
I said, why is that? I said, well, the whole thing is sponsored by the industry, so that they have the ability to talk to you, and you're denying them the opportunity. Yeah. So now you have to pay for that. And then the coin fell. She said, no, you're right. You're right. And then she turned it around and she said, but do you know them? how they treat us. I say, well, now we have an interesting discussion. He said, it feels awkward. Sometimes I feel, fear is a big word, but I feel the uneasiness on the other side. It's like when you're afraid of dogs and you walk by a dog, then when you're afraid, he bites you. Yeah. And she says, it sometimes feels uneasy how those people treat me. Just go. I do not bite. Yeah. Ask me that question. And that is also true. I said, well, this is something I can do something with towards my students. Just go there. Yeah. Funny story. Yeah. Well, full of stories. That's actually, I do not do, the only thing I do is sharing stories, and people say, guys, that's great. Now I'm joking, but the real stories from real life, they do work.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We did a whole episode of that in the first, and I think that's, again, where a lot of exhibitors kind of struggle in terms of telling their story. Okay, and that's really what actually connects people, right? At the end of the day, is if you share real life stories, and if you, again, just going back to asking open questions, if you get the answers that you need, it gives you the ammunition to be able to tell those stories and actually connect with your audience. And this is really what we're all after, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah, is find that common ground, common connection, and get the attendee to think, hang on, this person is worth having another conversation with.
That is true. You're selling the company also by the way. I always say to them, when you're there, the people sort of make a photo, like, how does this look? Yeah. And, well, to be very modern, I say, you want to be swiped. And we have the swipe thing, Tinder. And when you want to see a relationship, you want to be swiped. What do you do? Well, you have a good picture, you look good. Yeah, is it okay? I said, well, why don't you do that at the trade show? Because when you were swiped, then you might, and then people start laughing. And they always say, no, I do not know anything about it. My friend is using it. Or my
That's a great metaphor to use. Great example. All right, wonderful. So we've got the beginning, okay, where we're breaking the ice, we're asking open questions. We've got the middle, where we're asking questions about their needs and their challenges and their aspirations. Now we come to the end. Hopefully we've actually got an appointment in the calendar. And finally, we have to get rid of people. So what is the best way to, in your experience, to finish the conversation politely, because a lot of people, they just want to talk. A lot of attendees, they just want to talk. And sometimes the booth staff think, oh, it's impolite, okay, to finish the conversation. We'll carry on. So what is your best advice to finish the conversation?
Well, first thing, it's not impolite.
Yeah.
It's a trade show. One thing which always works is giving them something. Because giving them something is like the ritual of going away. Sometimes when you have something, have it at the edge of the booth, say, walk with me, I got something for you. And then you go away. And then they follow you like, oh gosh, where's this guy going? You say, well, thank you very much. People say, isn't that blunt? Then you say, how do we follow up? Yeah. What's next? Yeah. And what I also say in your body language, some people have been on a course and like mirroring with the people. And I say, well, stop mirroring. Say, okay, there's another vibe here. You grab your thing, you say, okay, let me get your information because, well, you see it's quite around. Thank you very much. Start saying goodbye. What is next on your agenda? Have you seen this and that? Where are you going now? Yeah. Also a joke that only goes for the Netherlands, I guess, but sometimes we have shows where a lot of civil servants are. And that's a dirty trick which works because you then always say, well, yeah, something about traffic jam and there was stuff with the trains. I said, I have to go. And then that was just a joke. But be very, it's your time, it's your money. But I want to make one remark. It's also with existing customers. Most of the people I train, they say, well, we have partly existing customers, partly new. Existing customers can ruin your trade show because it feels okay. You think I've done the right thing, but meanwhile, potentials are walking by. And I always say in 1/3 of the time, he's still your friend. He's still your customer. Yeah. And most of the time, this customer is also thinking, when can I go away? They want to be polite too. So you have two people trying to be polite, but they don't know from each other. So help them out. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a whole other.
A way to create more time. Yeah. But to go short, just be very decisive. We're going on, and then of course you have those are the lame excuses. You have to go to the bathroom, stuff like that. But
Yeah, and for me, what's always worked has been very direct, because obviously they understand that you're exhibiting, that you have many people to speak to, and nobody's going to be mad at you for finishing conversation. So just get on with it. Say your goodbyes.
It's like a prison. This is the sun shining here.
I know. I was actually going to say at the beginning, maybe I'll put this in the intro, that we're talking to Han from the Amsterdam prison.
With a lot of you see all my badges. These are all my during COVID I threw them all away. I was so frustrated, but this is after COVID. I keep on collecting them as a beacon of our industry.
Excellent. So, Han, I think we could talk for 2 years on these subjects.
Yes.
Okay. So we have to end somewhere, and we'll take our own advice.
We will. Well, we'll be talking, I don't know when you publish it, but we'll be seeing each other at events like IMAX, IFES in Guadalajara, where we're both at the education committee.
Yeah.
I mean, we're well connected.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I think that's one thing I'm really looking forward to, is sharing the stage with you, to get really the attendees to actually connect with each other in a meaningful way. And we're going to try some really good experiments, aren't we? Yeah. So that should be good fun.
For those IFES listeners who are coming to Mexico, you're in for a treat.
Absolutely. Brilliant. It's been a blast, Han, having you on this podcast. Thank you very much again. I really enjoyed it. And I will see you on the show floor very soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Wow, what a conversation. A huge thanks to Han for joining me on this episode and bringing not only his insight, but his signature sense of humour and warmth to the mic. From the power of curiosity to the importance of reading your audience, Han has reminded us that great conversations don't happen by chance, they happen by design. Now, here are a few gems for you to take away from this episode. Number 1, start with open questions that invite dialogue from the prospect or the attendee on the booth. Number 2, personalize every interaction, because one pitch doesn't fit all. And remember, lastly, ending a conversation is just as important as starting one, especially if you want to make space for high-value prospects. Now, if you're heading to a trade show soon, this will be your cue to ditch the pitch, turn on your radar, and engage with intention. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the rest of your team. And if you're fortunate enough to be coming to the IFES World Summit in Guadalajara later this June, we'll see you on stage for a few live experiments in human connection. Until the next time, stay curious, let's stay human, and as Han might say, let's keep it spicy.